Okay, today we're going to discuss renewable and non-renewable resources. And we've got our questions here. We're going to go through the questions and use them as our guide to have this discussion. All right, the first one says, most energy is used to produce electricity using mechanical energy. Mechanical energy moves things. Then the actual question is, what kind of alternative energy does not produce electricity using mechanical energy? Well, in order to answer this, we've got to understand what mechanical energy is. Well, if we look at that word mechanical, it starts with an M, and the word moving starts with an M. So mechanical energy is actually moving energy. Look down here at this picture. You see the wheel right here, the wooden wheel? Well, the water is flowing downhill, and it's pushing on the bottom of this wheel, making it spin. Now, as it spins, it's connected to a shaft, which turns this, and this up here is actually our generator. So the moving water, moving being the actual word, is mechanically turning this wheel, which produces electricity. Now, in almost all of our generating plants in the world, we use some kind of mechanical energy to make all of our electricity. Very tiny amount is produced not using mechanical energy. So, okay, now we have a new picture, and this picture shows about 5 different forms of renewable energy. We have solar energy, we have biomass, wind energy, geothermal energy, and hydropower energy. So the question was, what kind of alternative energy does not produce electricity using mechanical energy? So I want you to look at these 5 pictures and think about it. Okay, let's go talk about biomass. Well, if we burn biomass, if we burn it to boil water, boiling water produces steam. Steam spins a turbine, so that's moving energy. The wind moves a windmill, so it's pushing the windmill, so that's moving, so that's mechanical energy. A geothermal energy, we have the steam coming up out of the ground. Well, again, the steam is going to spin a turbine, so that's moving, so that's mechanical energy. And hydropower, we have dams, and the water's running down through a dam to spin the turbine. So that kind of leaves us with solar power, which would run a photocell, and in solar energy, the sunlight is changed directly into electricity. So what kind of alternative energy is made from plants? Well, another word for alternative would be renewable resource type energy. Okay, well, plants, we've got something called biomass. Bio means biological, and that means living. So biomass was plants, and so we would use the biomass to burn, which would then be producing steam and causing mechanical energy. So biomass would be made from plants. Okay, question 3. Geysers are what type of alternative energy? And I'd like you to explain this. All right, if you look at this picture, that is pure steam shooting up into the air. And you can tell it's steam because if you look, nothing is really falling back down into that pool. So geysers produce steam, and again, we know steam can be used to spin a turbine. Since it's moving something, it's another form of mechanical energy. So geysers are geothermal energy. I guess first of all, we need to make sure we understand what fossil fuels are. Fossil fuels are things like coal, oil, and natural gas. We burn them to create steam, which then is mechanical energy and produces our electricity. Now, since we're burning something, we can burn that any time we want to. We can burn oil, coal, or natural gas morning, noon, night. It doesn't matter what the weather is. Unfortunately, the sun doesn't always shine, and even when it does shine, it's only putting out its peak power for our photocells. The strongest sunlight is only for about 5 hours a day. So if we have need of incredible amounts of power, we need something that's going to be reliable 24 hours a day. So if that's the case, that's why we would use fossil fuels instead of solar power. Okay, what would be an advantage or a good thing to using fuel made from sugarcane or corn instead of fossil fuels? Think about that. Well, sugarcane and corn are both considered renewable because we can, you got it, we can plant more sugarcane and we can plant more corn, and we can keep renewing it. Whereas fossil fuels, once they're used up, they're used up. Now, this is a kind of an addition to the question, what would be a disadvantage for using, or an argument against using fuel made from sugarcane or corn? How would somebody argue against that? Don't know about you, but I love some good corn on the cob now and then, and there are just so many foods made from corn, and even sugar cane can be used to make sugar. So the argument is that you're taking food and you're making fuel out of it. So that's always a question. Number 6. What type of energy produces dangerous waste that has to be stored for a very long time? Uh, this this type of energy production is used here in Georgia, and it's used in a number of states, but a lot of people are kind of afraid of it. So what do you think? What type of energy is this? And the answer is nuclear power. Nuclear power, the waste product is, even though it doesn't have enough energy left in it to produce any more electricity, it's still very dangerous. Radioactive waste has to be buried, stored, kept away from people, anything living, even plants. You certainly don't want to get it in our water supply. So a big problem is where to store this waste, and it has to be stored for like thousands of years. So nuclear power, while it can be very efficient and very cheap and very reliable, this is a big drawback. So question number 7, what kind of alternative energy produces the least amount of environmental pollution? Well, probably solar panels. Solar panels, there's no waste product, there's not even any moving parts. The sun shines on the panels, they make electricity, and we use the electricity. Pretty simple, really. Okay, so hydroelectric power plants. They use dams to hold lots of water behind them, and they send this water down through turbines, which produce electricity. What kind of energy is actually being used to run the turbines? So take a look at the picture. What do you think? What kind of energy is actually making the electricity? Looks like something is moving. There's the M letter, so if it's moving, it must be mechanical energy. Okay. Question 9. What kind of energy do photovoltaic cells produce? Photocells. There's a new word for you. Photo. Photo sounds like light, voltage. So what do you think? And of course you know that these are solar panels, and they convert sunlight directly into electricity. Photovoltaic cells produce electricity from the sun. Number 10. Hydroelectric power is great because it uses what kind of resource? Hydroelectric. If you said water, you'd be right on the money. Hydro means water, and this is what we've already talked about before with a dam. Well, as you probably already know, they're called fossil fuels because they were formed millions and millions of years ago from dead plants and animals. Coal, oil, and natural gas are the 3 major fossil fuels, and they're non-renewable because it takes so long to make more. Number 12. Why is wood considered renewable? Well, I hate to insult you by even asking that question, But of course it's renewable because we can plant more trees, we can grow more wood, and it doesn't take that very long. And number 13 is kind of another duh question. Why are fossil fuels non-renewable? Why are fossil fuels non-renewable? Hello, remember me? Fossil fuels were formed over millions of years from dead plants and animals. So, number 14. What are some of the renewable resources? Well, we've seen this one before. We've got the sun for solar power, biomass, which is kind of caused by the sun because it makes the plants grow, but biomass is made from plants. Wind energy is the wind that turns wind turbines. Geothermal energy comes from inside the earth. Hydropower, hydroelectric, that's water. So those are the 5 main uh, renewable resources. And there's a couple of minor ones, like you can use the ocean tides to produce some electricity. They're experimenting with using waves in the ocean to produce some electricity also. Number 15. Where and how was coal formed? Well, let's take a look. Well, millions of years ago, the surface of the earth was super warm and muggy and lots of rain, and the huge parts of the land were covered with these tropical forests with almost inland seas of fresh water. And in these seas grew this stuff kind of like moss. You know, when you go down to your pond, sometimes you got this squishy, mossy, green-looking stuff growing. Well, these inland seas were covered with these huge layers of peat. And over millions of years, they kept growing and burying each other, and a new layer would grow on top of the next layer, and a new layer would grow on top of that, until finally they compressed it and pushed it down into the earth. And then from over millions of years, with time, pressure, and heat, it changed from being these plants, these microscopic tiny plants and things, into the different types of coal that we use today. Number 16. What makes solar energy so attractive as an energy source? Well, as we know, solar energy is totally non-polluting. We can use these solar panels, and it just goes from the bright sunshine to becoming electricity. What could be simpler? And that brings us to question number 17. Which renewable energy resource is used the least in the United States? Well, if you said solar, you'd be correct, because as we know, the sun does not always shine. Number 18. Which renewable energy resource is used the least in the United States? Think about it. We've actually already talked about it, but let's check out this. Okay, if you look at this chart, it shows you that natural gas, petroleum, coal, nuclear electric power, and the renewable energy of the renewable energies, they provide around 10% of our electricity. And if you look at that little piece out there to the side, it shows hydroelectric, wood, biofuels, biomass, wind, solar, and geothermal. It's a tiny bit misleading because geothermal is actually the smallest, but we consider solar to be the least realistic because geothermal only exists in very few places. So solar, wind, bio, wood, and hydro, they're routinely available many places around the United States. So we say that of the renewable resources that's used the least, it's really going to be called solar power, okay? Really solar power. And that brings us to question number 19, which I'm not going to type. Which non-renewable energy resource is used the most in the U.S.? And as we look at our chart, we can see it is good old petroleum or oil. We use petroleum or oil to make electricity. We use it for all of our cars and trucks. So we use far more petroleum and natural gas than we do of anything else. But petroleum is the number one of all.